Tip number 1 is about knowing the exam. So first, let's think about why you need to know about the exam. So if you know what you're expected to do in the exam, that means you can do it well, and the exam is a better reflection of your English level. So the better you know the exam, the better it tests your English rather than your exam knowledge. So let's have a look at the IELTS exam. So you need to know about the format of the exam. How many sections are there? There are 4 sections: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We're going to have a little look at each of those sections now. So the reading text lasts for 1 hour. There are 3 texts that you have to read and a total of 40 questions across the total 1 hour exam. The listening part will normally last about 30 to 40 minutes. You have 30 minutes of listening and 10 minutes to copy your answers onto your answer sheet. There are 4 different parts that you have to listen to, which could involve 1 person or up to 4 people. The writing part will last for 1 hour, during which you have to write 2 things. First, a report, and secondly, an essay. And the speaking part will last about 15 minutes, and there are 3 different parts in this 15 minutes section. Okay, so within the reading and listening, you need to know about the different task types that you will be asked about. This website here will take you to a page that tells you about the different task types. Here are some examples you can see that I've taken from this website. So there are a total of 6 listening types and 11 reading question types. Okay, and all of them can be found on this website. Understanding those different question types can help you answer the questions in a better way. Following that, for the speaking and the writing, the band descriptors are publicly published, so you can find them on this website here, and they look like this. And they tell you what you need to do in order to get the level that you require. So really useful to find those band descriptors, to read them, and to find out what you actually need to do in order to get the score that you are looking for. Okay, tip number 2 is to study English, not just IELTS. Many of our students come and they say, we want to learn IELTS. Okay, yes, you do need to learn about IELTS because, as we said before, you need to know the exam. Tip number 2 is about studying English, not just the IELTS. Whilst it is important to study for the IELTS, because you need to know the exam, as we just mentioned in tip number 1, it's also important to remember that the IELTS is testing your English level. So in order to get a high score, you need to have a high level of English. So you need to study the English as well. Okay, it's better to have good English and no exam techniques than good exam techniques than no English in terms of the level. And again, you can find the information you need on the band descriptors. They tell you that you need to use a sufficient range of vocabulary. So you need to learn English vocabulary. You also need a variety of structures. This means learning different types of grammatical structures and sentence structures, and produce frequent error-free sentences, so no grammatical errors in your sentences. So in order to achieve those 3 things, which is relevant for both the speaking and the writing, you need to study English and you need to improve the level of your English. Tip number 3 is about learning vocabulary. As we just saw on the band descriptors, it says that you need to have a range of vocabulary. You need to know when to use the vocabulary, and you need to know how to use the vocabulary. Is it suitable for writing or speaking, or both? You need to know how to spell the vocabulary. in order to improve your writing and your listening. And you need to Tip number 3 is about learning vocabulary. If you learn a wide range of vocabulary, this will help you for all parts of the exam. There are various word lists out there. We suggest that you have a look at the Opal Academic Word List, which is a really good list of the most common academic words in English that you should understand for writing, speaking, and also understand when you see it in reading or hear it in listening. A good way of practicing this vocabulary is using Quizlet. In the school here, we have a set of flashcards that we provide students with, as you can see in the picture, and it helps you to revise and learn this vocabulary every day. You can find a range of lists on the internet of the top topics, but within those range of lists, you will see common areas. So some of the examples here, for example, the environment, crime, technology, social media, there are common topics that come up again and again and again. If you learn vocabulary related to those topics, then you will be better suited to understanding them and using them in the exam. You need to learn when and how to use the vocabulary. So is it suitable for writing, or is it suitable for speaking, or maybe for both of them? You need to learn how to spell it in order to write it down in your writing part and also in the listening part when you hear it in the exam. And you need to know how to pronounce it so that you can speak it in the speaking test and also understand it when you hear it in the listening test. Oxford Learner's Dictionary has a very good tool. As you can see, they have the pronunciation in both British English and American English for you to listen to and help you practice. Tip number 4 is about practicing and reflecting. The same as learning any skill in life, you can only learn it well by continuous practice. And the more you practice, okay, that's going to help you, but only if you reflect on what you have practiced and how well you learned. So you should be working on the basics. So as we said before, you need to have good grammar. So you need to be practicing that grammar until it's automatic and you can do it without thinking. The same for spelling. You need to be practicing and practicing until you can do it without thinking. This will save you time in the exam and also reduce the amount of errors that you have in the exam. And you need to know the common errors that you personally make. Do you have problems remembering whether a noun is singular or plural? Do you often forget to put the S on a third person? Or do you get your pronouns mixed up? Pronunciation, are there any words that you find difficult that maybe you need to practice beforehand? Practicing these things in speaking and writing and getting feedback is really important. If you have a teacher, they can give you feedback such as you can see on the screen here, where they help you to improve your grammar mistakes and to help you realize what common errors you often make. So you can learn from those mistakes. Mistakes are fine when you're practicing in order to learn, but you must think about those mistakes. Why did you make them? And how can you avoid making them next time? Tip number 5, think about timing. This is very important. In the exam, there is not much time. You have only 1 hour for 2 pieces of writing, only 1 hour for 3 pieces of reading. It's not a lot of time. However, to begin with, you might want to think about not thinking about timing. So practice without any time limits until you're comfortable with the task. Why put extra pressure on yourself until you know that you can actually do the task? So start off practicing the tasks, looking at the different task types without worrying about any time limits. Then, once you feel that you are comfortable with the task and you can do it, then you can start putting time limits on and practice doing the same task in a shorter time, ready for the exam. You need to split the timings into manageable times. So rather than just thinking, I have an hour for my writing, you need to split that into the different parts. So you have two parts. One is worth more than the other. So part one, we would suggest that you spend 20 minutes. And for part two, 40 minutes. But within that 40 minutes, again, split it up further. Spend 10 minutes to plan your answer, 25 minutes actually writing your answer, and make sure you think about giving yourself time at the end, about 5 minutes usually, to check your answer and go through looking for grammar mistakes. Tip number 6 is think about structure. This applies to both the speaking and the writing sections of the exam. As you can see from the band descriptors, you need to organize your information, you need to have a clear progression, and you need to use cohesive devices to help you to do that. So in the writing, this will mean you have an introduction, the body paragraphs, and your conclusion. Similarly, in the speaking, you have an opening, the body of what you want to say, and a closing sentence. Discourse markers are the phrases that help you to organize your writing and to show the reader or listener that you have organized your writing. Here are some examples. Now, one way that we help students with this is to provide them with a structure or framework for different types of writing. Here is an example for an essay where you have the introduction with 3 or 4 sentences, your body paragraphs with 4 or 5 sentences in each one, and your conclusion, again, with 3 or 4 sentences. You also need to then think about the discourse markers that you're going to use. So again, we provide students with examples of discourse markers. Here is an essay and a speaking question, and the highlighted phrases are discourse markers that can be used with a variety of different questions. Now remember, it's not enough to simply learn these phrases, but you need to learn how to use them flexibly to be able to adapt them to the question that you are given. Number 7 is titled Plan and Check. Now this is mainly for the writing section of the exam. Planning is really, really important. I used to work with an IELTS examiner who said she could always tell when students had planned their writing because it would be much, much better. So please do take the time. How much time? Well, I would suggest around about 10 minutes because remember, you need to think about 4 different things. You need to think about the structure of how you're going to write your essay. You need to think of the ideas that you want to say when you write your essay. You need to think of examples that you can use to support your ideas. And you need to think about synonyms so that you can have a wide range of vocabulary. Once you've finished writing your essay or your report, you then need to take a few minutes. In this case, I would suggest 5 minutes to check your writing. Remember, from the band descriptors, we are looking for frequent error-free sentences. So if you take time to go back and check spelling errors, grammatical errors, and correct them, you will increase the number of error-free sentences and you will increase your band score. Tip number 8 is develop strategies. Now this is mainly for the reading section of the exam. And remember, there are 11 different task types in the reading. That means 11 different styles of questions that they might ask you in the reading section of the exam. So for each of these different task types, you need to practice them and you need to find a way that works to answer it in the shortest possible time. Time is a big pressure in the reading section of the exam. You only have 1 hour to answer 40 questions. Let's have a look at an example. Here is an example of one question type, which is matching the headings to the paragraphs. So how would we approach this? There are a number of questions you might ask yourself. Should you read the text first? Should you read the questions first? Should you read all of the text or just one paragraph at a time? Do I need to read paragraph A? So I'm going to attempt to answer them for you now. Should I read the text first? Yes, I think you should, but read it very quickly. You're skimming it to get an idea of the general overall topic. You're not reading it to find out all the information. So just 1 or 2 minutes to get a general idea of the topic and then stop. Then read the questions. Particularly make a point to read the instructions first so that you know what you have to do. In this case, we look at the last question, do I need to read paragraph A? The example here is paragraph A, so they've already answered it for you. So you don't need to read paragraph A. So you can start with paragraph B. I would suggest you read paragraph B, then come and read the list of headings and choose the heading that's most appropriate for the paragraph. Then read paragraph C and choose a heading, and D and choose a heading, and finally E and choose the heading. So you're reducing the amount of reading you have to do in order to answer each question and save yourself time wherever possible. So this is something you need to try and work out for yourself, which strategy works best for you. There are certain strategies that teachers can provide you with to help you, but some of them work better for some people and maybe another one works a little bit better for a different person. So it's about practice, finding what works for you and then increasing the speed in which you do it. Tip number 9 is practice note-taking. As you might guess, this is mostly for the listening section of the exam. It's really important for this section of the exam. During the listening section, you have to listen to the recording and you can only listen once. But whilst you're listening, you also have to read the questions and you have to write your answers or notes to help you answer the questions. So it really is something that you need to practice. Practice listening, reading, taking notes, writing while someone is speaking, writing whilst you're watching a TV program, writing in a lecture at school, anything where you can practice taking notes whilst you're listening to something. Find your own form of shorthand that you can use. The notes that you make are only for you. The examiner will not read them, so it doesn't matter how you write. You could shorten certain words, you could have symbols for certain words, anything that you understand what you mean when you are transcribing your answers onto the answer sheet at the end of the exam. Remember, as you're listening though, you also need to check the grammar. If you have a gap fill, for example, does the word that you're putting in the space match the grammar of the sentence? Similarly, does the meaning of the word match the meaning of the vocabulary in the sentence? At the end of the exam, you have 10 minutes in which to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet. Now, this is not a lot of time, so don't rely too much on this time. However, this is the time when you really need to focus on the spelling. As I said before, the notes you wrote are not checked by the examiner, so the spelling on them is not important. But the answer sheet, the spelling is very important. If the spelling is not correct, your answer will not be correct. Tip number 10 is use English every day. This relates back to tip number 2, where we mentioned that the IELTS is a test of your English level. So the more you use English, the better you will be in the exam. So try to use English as much as possible in your everyday life. Here are some examples of how you could do this. Find someone to speak English with. It could be someone in your country, or it could be somebody online. Read in English, whether you like to read books or articles or blogs or information for your studies, whatever it is, read it in English. Listen to podcasts in English or watch programs or vlogs in English. A tip here is to find something that you enjoy and that you are interested in. The more you are interested in it, the more you will do it and the better you will be at it. This will help to familiarize yourself with English. The more familiar you are with it, the easier it will be to use, to understand, and to speak and write it. It will also help you to develop ideas to talk about in both the speaking and the writing. And these ideas will be developed in English, meaning you will avoid any problems of translating your ideas from your first language. Finally, it will help you to feel more confident in the exam. The more you use English, the more comfortable you will be with English. So when you go to the exam and you are asked to use English, the least stressful it will be for you. That's the end of my tips. Thank you for watching and good luck with your IELTS exam.